Hello, everyone. Welcome back to We Interrupt This program. I am Vern Cooper,
And I'm Ebony Williams.
and we're here to. And my cat's going to interrupt us multiple times, probably because I just got back from out of town. We were in the process of talking about one of our favorite shows ever.
Favorite of all time.
It's quite good.
It is good. It really is good. And then you know what? As I go back, I'm noticing stuff that I didn't notice like the first run through.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just a beautiful show.
That is the mark of good. Of good, filmmaking or television making or just storytelling.
Uh-huh.
So we left off last time having talked about our favorite ways that Joel and others in the show approach mentoring and teaching, supporting Ellie and others as they grow.
Okay, so I got this huge smile, right? Because when we were talking before, we talked about okay, so who would be the the counter to mentoring. So we talked about what's his name?
David?
David. We talked
Yeah.
about David, but we didn't talk about my favorite person, Kathleen.
Kathleen. And you're so right. And, in terms of like, Kathleen has a very little screen time. Shoot, what's her face? What's the name of the woman who plays her? Melanie Linsky. Melanie Linsky. She gets very little screen time, but her performance is so pitch perfect that she really doesn't need much. I've never been a director or an editor or anything like that, but she's the kind of performer who she's so economical. You don't need a lot of her to make the impact that the character is there to make.
And she is terrifying
She's so terrifying and so relatable.
at the same time.
Hmm.
At the same
And I
time.
think that that's what she's there for. She's there to sort of exemplify one way a person could reasonably react to their circumstances.
Right.
She's traumatized,
Yeah.
and she's traumatized in an already traumatized landscape, and she's also the age of someone who would have been there when the world fell.
Uh-huh.
So she's been through this before too.
Yeah.
What do you think? So, what about her is I know that she's an excellent villain, but what about her do you see as a foil to Joel?
Just first of all, I would say the care and concern that he has for Ellie's life versus Kathleen's approach to what's the young boy's name?
The
Henry and
Is it Steven?
this is really our favorite show. We just can't remember names right now. Henry and yeah, somebody can Google. Google is free.
Sam.
Sam. Okay, Sam and Henry. Just okay, so thinking about that. So for Joel, there was no question that Ellie's life needed to be preserved.
No matter how
And
he had to rationalize it
no matter how.
to
But
keep
then
her
for
at arm's length.
yeah, but then for Kathleen, it's like, well, this happens. If Kathleen would have been in a similar position, Ellie would have been gone because
Right.
she's thinking more about the greater good in some ways.
Didn't Kathleen say like children die all the time?
Yeah,
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 because her own child also died
yeah.
shortly
Which
after her brother was betrayed and died.
so and also, we talk about The Last of Us, we talk about the podcast that we did before talking about The Last of Us. One of the things that I mentioned on that one was I did not it didn't occur to me that that was her son because of the way she grieved. And I think that that's also another thing about this show is we all would handle these situations differently. We all would trauma looks different for all of us. Grief looks different.
Uh-huh.
So then, like, one of the things I remember saying as you and I were talking about this is I had to kind of reconcile for myself that just because she didn't handle it the way Joel would have handled it, or the way you would have expected for a mother to handle the death of a child, doesn't mean that she didn't handle it the way that was like right for her.
And that she doesn't deserve our condolences. Or
Right.
that's an excellent point. We had that talk when my brother died. Vanessa, my sister, she was like, her husband, when he found out, some people don't have empathy. I found this out. He I don't think, maybe doesn't or something. I don't know. We'll have to cut this out. That part out.
It's like, how would your family feel about you saying?
Well, Vanessa told me that, but but anyway, one of the when beef when my brother died, Vanessa was upset a little bit that her husband didn't react in a way that I guess seemed like, or that she felt like he should. He went and immediately started doing chores. He got up and he started immediately washing the car and power washing the deck, doing just cleaning everything he could find outside the house. Mom had to tell Vanessa, like, that's some people, that might be his response, some people's response,
Yeah.
and he's probably doing some thinking and some processing. So yeah, that's a really good point. And also, the way that we know that he was her son is because he told us, you have to take me to my mom.
Right.
And that, i- in small ways, reminds me of, was George Floyd, who asked for his mom.
Yeah. Yeah. I send a chill.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not sure I want to mention this, but it is what it made me think of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that he knew he was dying. And Kathleen, like you said, her approach to leadership is for the greater good. And this is an old debate. It's as old as the hills. What is, for leaders, you have to make the decision whether you are someone who will go the extra mile for the individual at the risk of the community, or if you will sacrifice the individual for the greater good. This has been the central conflict for a lot of stories.
Yeah. I would say though, even though Kathleen is about the greater good, she's also about obsession. Like she is obsessed with finding her brother's killer,
Mhm.
or finding the person she feels is responsible for her brother's death.
And she frames it as justice, as like equality. And in in her defense, she's correct that that's what those two things look like. True justice and true equality are really horrifying. It's some eye for an eye shit. That's what justice is. Justice is God sending us to hell instead of forgiving us. Okay, beef. That was. Thank you for that contribution. Well put.
Yeah. So as we were talking, I was thinking about Joel, Kathleen, and then David. A part of me like was thinking that in a way they're kind of like on a continuum. So like Joel is, I don't know though, because they're all kind of selfish in a way, right? Because I would argue that part of the reason why Joel wants Ellie to live is selfish. He has developed a relationship with her. He doesn't want to lose another child. Whatever that reason is, it's considered selfish.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I agree. Each of us, when we choosing to fulfill our own goals, is selfish, even if we construct those goals to be the correct ones, or
Mhm.
and Joel and Ellie's question is again also
We just have a guest speaker today.
uh,
Did she plop down?
Joel and Ellie have the decision of, you know, the greater good versus individual, the health and well-being of the individual. There we go. Lay down. There we go. Good girl. Yeah. You're just beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with. I want to talk about David first. I want to talk about not only because of I would like for you to continue your thought that you were having about the continuum.
Decision making. Like we talked about Kathleen, who wants justice. David wants power.
And
So,
peace. He wants to not be bothered.
okay, oh, say more.
I think that David's style of leadership is one of efficiency, and he doesn't want to be bothered by the quotidian, right? He wants a seamless journey, and he wants everything to run as smoothly as possible for him.
So he doesn't want to be challenged.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. Okay. So then Joel then is so then what would we say about Joel?
As a leader,
He wouldn't consider himself a leader.
I
I think
think that
he's
he's a father.
yeah, yeah.
Is a very specific kind of leadership that is it's almost a no-win scenario. It's charged with both the health and well-being of the individual and the safety and security of the group. And it's like there's no way to accomplish both of those all the time. And so, yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
He's the kind of leader though that is invested in his charges. So he wants Ellie to learn and grow and be self-sufficient. Neither Kathleen nor David has planned for the future that they're not in. There's no plan of succession. There's no like interest paid to, who's going to replace David. In his mind, there's no need to worry about it because all he cares about is his success, not whether the group is actually okay.
Yeah.
For Kathleen, it's probably more of like well, they'll watch what I do because I'm right, and then they'll just do what I do, and that's how they'll succeed. She doesn't need to grow any successors. She's got Peter, is that his name? The
Agree.
Perry, the guy with the beard, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Since we're talking about leaders, we need to go in and add Marlene
Marlene,
into
exactly.
this into this bitch. No, I'm just kidding. To this bunch.
Yeah, that's true. Because Marlene is somebody who she's a very specific kind of I don't know what to say about her. What's uncomfortable about Joel, Marlene, David, and Kathleen is that we all have to ask ourselves the question, where do we fall on this continuum? And so maybe that's the benefit to having it arranged that way.
Right. Each of them made some very hard decisions, and those hard decisions have very real consequences. And like we don't necessarily get to see the consequences that Joel, Sam, and Ellie has had yet. We'll see them, you know? So I think like some of the things that I think about, what happens to the people in Kansas City when Kathleen isn't there anymore? What happens to the people in Colorado? It was Colorado, right?
Yeah,
When David is no longer there. Like what happens to the rest of the people he was leading?
yeah.
You know,
And this also goes back to parenting styles because the parenting style that I experienced as a kid was like, you don't need to know about this because you're not gonna ever encounter this or something, like that was I think my mom's hope for scare tactics involving substance use. Because that didn't work. Because when I encountered substances, I was like, Mom made them sound kind of cool and terrifying. It's like, but that was that was what she had to work with.
so it's interesting that you brought up parenting styles because right now we're talking about four leaders and their four parenting styles. And they kind of added in a fifth one. So is authoritative. authoritarian, submissive, and what's the other one? Non-existent. No, it's not non-existent. Hold on. I had my notes. Let me get to my notes. You know, AI is just everywhere. Okay, 4 types of parenting styles. Neglectful. Okay. So, okay, authoritarian. So we talked about authoritarian. Authoritarian is this very strict, rigid, kind of structure. Is my way or the highway. Authoritative is very much warm, but also clear boundaries. Permissive is almost kind of overindulging. And then neglectful is, as the name says, like not paying much attention to the child's needs.
Hmm.
So then if we think about it, then authoritative is supposed to be kind of that sweet spot between being warm but also having clear boundaries and stated rules. And I think Joel is there. Like Joel is very much authoritative.
Yeah. But and what's interesting about the show is that, none of those styles I think would have the absolute correct answer on what is ultimately asked of Joel and Ellie and Marlene to figure out. And so that's kind of cool. Like the show sort of takes a model and puts it into the real world, into a no-win scenario.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you a Star Trek fan?
No, not necessarily. I watched The Next Generation, but other than that, I'm not really into Star Trek.
This is original the original series and the original cast. There's a central moral dilemma of the the needs of the many versus the needs of the few, and also the no-win scenario. So there's a test that they have to take before they can finish their degrees to go into Starfleet called the Kobayashi Maru, and it's designed so that it's not winnable. That the goal, the whole point of this test is that every leader has to experience defeat at some point, and it's a lot. It's a big loss. There's a lot of people. The name of the ship is Kobayashi Maru. There's a lot of people on it, and they all die because you're unable to save them in this test. And so that's kind of like where all of these styles really there's no perfect answer. There's no solution to some problems out there.
Right.
Sometimes what Joel and Marlene represent ultimately at the end are just the two possible solutions to this problem.
Right. Yeah. And I think about that quite a bit, right? Either way, Marlene could have had her way, perform this thing on Ellie, and it not work. And now Ellie is just gone.
And it was worth it to her to try that.
Yeah.
So her leadership style is try everything that I don't know that she would try it based on nothing. So she clearly had some idea that it could be possible, like from maybe the folks who were going to assist with the procedure, but I don't know that she could claim any level of certainty that this was going to work.
Yeah. And like, think about the cause for her. Like, this is the child of one of her dear friends. And it means so much to her that she is willing to go back on a promise to her friend to save the world. Like, that's deep.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way. What would her mom say? What was her mom's name? Anna.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, well, so let's talk about uh Tommy. Let's talk about, yeah, like on a lesser level, the tension is what happens when people who are family disagree at a fundamental ideological level. So you could map a lot of uh topics onto Joel and Tommy. You could map politics, you could map religion, you could map, um, just a disagreement over, you know, something every day. But their falling out is a is a big deal. It drives them literally apart. Like they're on opposite ends of the country after this
Yeah,
disagreement of fundamental ideals.
yeah. It's like, think about again the type of leader that Joel is. Even though they had this disagreement, I am still going to travel like across the country in impossible situations. I don't have the kind of stuff that I need to be able to get there, but I'm going to do what I can to get there. It's just incredible.
It is. It's very tenacious, but also from Tommy's perspective, it's invalidating because
Oof.
Tommy
Eesh.
Tommy was wanting space. Tommy's the one who left, and he's not being given that space because Joel will always, as the older sibling, have this to fall back on that I'm just trying to keep you safe. And
Yeah.
having been the older sibling, we have many subtle manipulations at our fingertips for invalidating the autonomy and experiences of our younger siblings, especially if for whatever reason we're left in charge of them. Because I was, I had all kinds of manipulations at my fingertips to use against my younger siblings if I need just to get them to do the stuff I needed them to do. Because what power do I have over them?
None.
Yeah. And so if it's my job to get them in the bath and they say no, my other recourse is to manipulate them or get whipped when I get home because they still smell bad, you know? And so, Tommy, disagreement was such that Tommy felt that he couldn't stand on his own, I guess,
Hmm.
being close to Joel. In some ways, too, at the very beginning, Joel reminds me of those of the it's not my business, so I'm not going to get into it. Politics folks, the extreme moderates who are like, I'm just gonna it doesn't affect me, so I'm just gonna do me and stay here, whatever. And Tommy's perspective is like ultimately it does affect us all. And also maybe that shouldn't be the only reason we take a stand on certain things. So like Joel at the very beginning when he's very traumatized and he's very like he reminds me of like the white feminists. I don't know. We're really getting in the weeds there, but to bring it back to Joel and Tommy.
Please say more about how Joel is like compared to the white feminist.
Because his whole thing with the fireflies and Edra is, you know, like he doesn't no not only does he not disagree or not agree with the fireflies and stuff, he doesn't think Tommy should be one of them because it's dangerous. And so he doesn't think Tommy should have the luxury of his own individual ideals because Joel is still doing his big brother job of keeping him safe. And so Joel's perspective is like, just keep your head down. It doesn't affect you. Just don't worry about it. Keep your head down. And that is where a lot of allyship falls down when it comes time to actually put skin in the game. But okay, here comes another cat.
Which one is that?
That's
Is
Brisket.
that
I've got beef and brisket here with me.
sounds like dinner?
I know. They have real names. I just don't remember them. Well,
Either.
Brisket's real name is Biscuit, so it's not. Yeah, but I don't remember Beef's real name. All right, so let's talk finally about this decision that
Did we really talk about David though?
I can't remember. Did we?
No, I don't think we did. I
This
don't
is
think
like
we
one of
got
the
into
most
David.
this is one of the most disorganized episodes we've ever recorded.
Well, but I think we're getting some good stuff
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
So David, I think, is the complete opposite of Joel. Like where Joel is authoritative, David is authoritarian. It's that it's my way or the highway.
For no, I don't have to tell you why even.
Right, right. And I don't have to tell you why. And don't you question me or I'm
Hmm.
going to slap you.
Or the 10. Yeah.
Or it's a sin. Just thinking about like those instances. And also David wanted Ellie. Like his selfishness was also about that power. Like having someone like Ellie on his side, like he was thinking of ways to maintain his power, especially considering the winter that they were suffering was particularly hard. So, you know that people in his congregation were losing faith in him. He said it. Um, he felt like folks were losing faith in him. So, like getting somebody like Ellie, I don't know, in his head, some kind of way, he sees that as a way for him to maintain power or favor with the group, which also is kind of problematic. Taking on a team bride, I don't know.
It really went
It's
there, didn't
just
it?
it did.
I said earlier that David wasn't thinking about succession, and I'm going to walk that back because even though he didn't make it ex- explicit, that was something that was sort of coded into his overtures to Ellie. Was kind of like
Yeah.
he wasn't thinking that he wanted her for it. It was just part of the offer. Like some of us are leaders and some of us aren't, and he was likening her to him as a kind of a manipulation, but implied in that was also that she would be someone who shared power or in some way.
Uh, I just had a thought, right? So as we think about like towards the end of the episode and why Joel has to make this decision. Because Ellie was suicidal. Like she had given up on life. And I also wonder, like thinking somebody like David says we're alike. Like how does that impact your psyche? You
Especially if
know,
you're already in crisis.
if you're already in crisis. And then to have this situation that like the trauma, the trauma of the entire situation. And then also maybe David was right because like what she did to him, like
That might be, something that hurt the most. I was having a conversation with some friends this past week about how violence can be such a compelling tool or such a seductive tool. And, for I think for those of us that for whom violence is so accessible, um, if you're someone whose response is that first, like you're a fighter, it's the shortest distance between two lines. It's the fastest way. It's the fastest and most efficient method of getting accomplishing a job or something. But it also feels good to a lot of people. Like violence, just it's a I don't know why. I'm not someone who knows these things, but I do know that times when I have experienced or I have wielded violence as a tool, it's felt great in the moment. And then later, there's so much to unpack about why that is and all that stuff. It's really messy. But um, if you never stop to think about those things, then you're someone who can stay in violence and keep violence as your tool, maybe perpetually, for the rest of your life.
yeah,
Why do you think, or how do you feel about the violence, the sexual violence becoming explicit
in the show.
from specifically from David towards Ellie?
Uh, to break her will, which I think like that's how you keep somebody in captivity, right? You let them know that they no longer have any choices. And one of the choices is what you thought was yours belongs to me. Like
Hmm. Right.
this this is not your body, this is my body, and I'm going to take what I want and I'm going to show you this. So I think that also like and thinking about this too, that's also why I think it was important for Ellie to fight her way out of that situation and not Joel to save her.
Yeah, Joel couldn't save her from that because that threat's
No.
always there. For for Ellie in particular, in a rapeable body, right? In a body that is seen, always going to be seen and coveted as an object to be controlled or taken or something like that for a variety of messed up reasons. It had to be her that got her out herself out of that situation.
Like, and let's talk about that piece too, right? We know that systems have created this place where something like rape is an act of aggression or power. Even in the apocalypse, things like that are still used. Violence, rape is still used against people, against individuals. Like, they just kind of blows my mind. Like, when we think about these systems, they are so like patriarchy. That's what that is. Like, Joel is I'm not Joel. I mean, that could have been a Freudian slip. I don't know. I gotta think about that. Is Joel representing patriarchy? Huh. I wasn't ready for that one. I wasn't ready for it. But David definitely. Yeah, David definitely.
He's there's a kind of like a rhetorical device called a reductio ad absurdum that takes a situation or a problem or something and carries it to its most logical extreme to test it, basically to test its logic, to find how far the thing can go. David is kind of a patriarchal reductio ad absurdum. Like, he is, if we were able to distill this and boil it down, that is how far it could go or how bad it could go.
Yeah.
In one way, though, you know, David and Kathleen are sort of gender flip foils. You know, in a way.
Excuse me.
See,
And excuse me. Okay, sorry. Gender flip foils.
uh, I think in a way Kathleen is demonstrative that it isn't only a patriarchal system that can be oppressive and flawed, because Kathleen's regime is no, I wouldn't really characterize it as patriarchal, the structure, but I think that her leadership style is as flawed, but perhaps like the extreme version of a maternal approach.
See, I'm gonna have to agree to disagree here because, as you say that, the thing I think about though is like internalized racism, internalized misogyny, like all of these things that I don't know. I don't know that I would argue that Kathleen's system wasn't patriarchal.
Okay. So like she was replicating, or she was someone who was replicating that system because it was just, she inherited it, didn't she? It was her
Mm-hmm.
brother's.
Yeah.
He was the leader and was snitched on and was executed, and so then she's stuck with it. Okay.
Did you think this conversation was going to get this political? We are in it.
It's
We
so
are in
bad.
it.
It's so bad.
We are in it. We are in it deep.
Okay, let's try to, in case somebody wanted to actually listen to this and enjoy it, let's go back.
There's so much that could be said. So much.
Yeah. But yes, ultimately, I think that is what David represents, is like this like worst case scenario of a tyrannical, authoritarian style of governance, leadership, whatever, fathering. And insert your metaphor here in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing I like about this show, is that the apocalypse is not often used so productively for metaphor.
Mm,
The absence of the culture, or of our culture, but the presence still of its mores and its agents, like we're still there, but the system itself is gone. It's a great opportunity to sort of to ask ourselves questions about what would we do here, how would we respond here, what are some of the ways we could look if we were given the chance to sidestep some of the structures that we currently have. And one thing that we would definitely do is just set the same shit right back up again
Right.
to make it work.
Right. And then like thinking about okay, so another leader we have not talked about is Tommy's wife. Tommy's wife. Because like if we're gonna talk about
Maria,
Maria, a patriarchal systems, if we're gonna talk about systems, we also talk about the commune, and how they did something different.
I was so uneasy the whole time they were there because of how tense it was. Because I kept feeling like every time I've seen something like this on television, there's a dark secret somewhere, right? It looks good on the surface, but it's not really working. And it got me thinking of how, television and just our media are, in a lot of ways, system justifying rhetorics. And I am conditioned to expect that because our current system doesn't benefit from me thinking outside of its bounds. So to see something like that system that Tommy and Maria have working, it's not good for the system as that I actually live in right now. It's not good for me to be able to look. I don't know. So I was like, where's the dark secret to how this really works or something?
Yeah. What if there's no dark secret?
I hope there's not.
So I think though, another thing, so comparing it to communities, like the community that David oversaw to the community that Maria was a part of, like we see two totally different things. And we see people handling the winter two totally different ways,
Absolutely, yeah.
you know?
Something and something that David and his bunch never seemed to consider was ways to adapt. They never really thought about moving
Uh,
because it wasn't part of the fiction that he was selling, which was this kind of city on the hill, um, promised land bullshit. The difference between their location and Tommy and Maria's location is that, well, it's night and day. Nobody in their right mind who knew what they were doing would stay where David and his people were.
right. But also, though, I think we see what happens when you have one person making a decision for the collective
Right.
versus different people having voices, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And then, Tommy and Maria's, we haven't seen it face anything yet. I don't know if we're gonna see it in season two. It doesn't feature heavily in the game, but that doesn't mean that season two has to be a blanket adaptation of the game. Season one wasn't. Some of the
Yeah.
best things from season one were off the page,
Yeah.
of the game, like Bill.
Another leader we have not
Yeah, I
discussed.
know. He's sort of it's almost an anti-hero in a way.
Yeah.
Well, finally we wind up at this place where the mission has been completed. Joel and Ellie arrive um after, Joel, there's the sort of day they or the time they have to spend while Joel heals, and we see that's when Ellie um interacts with David and all of those. But there's that one episode before that where we see the flashbacks of Ellie and Riley. And I noticed it made me think too, like on a rewatch when Marlene was debating with Ellie about the Fireflies, and Ellie said the
Uh-huh.
Fireflies are terrorists, they're killers and stuff. And Marlene says, "Was Riley a terrorist?"
Uh-huh.
Well, we didn't know who Riley was the first time we watched it,
Uh-huh. Yeah. No,
but
we
then we find
don't.
out. And so then by the time I just realized that happens right before Ellie meets David. So we now know Ellie is queer.
Uh-huh.
And so then this I don't know, I mean, that kind of, to me, filtered onto the sexual violence component, but I don't know if it was like intended to. But anyway, they finally get to Marlene, who says that she barely made it across the country with an army, and Joel and Ellie make it by themselves.
Without a scratch on them.
Yeah, well, I don't know if
Well,
that's true.
no, yeah. Wait, let me take that one back. Run that back.
They got all their limbs anyway. We can say that
Right, right. They didn't die.
they didn't die, which she's very impressed with in a begrudging way. You can tell that Marlene is looking at a wasted resource, that she can't have, that
Yeah.
Joel and just won't join her. And, then things start to move really quickly. We learn what really is going to happen to Ellie.
Do you think it would have worked?
No.
You know,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say they tell us in the beginning it's not gonna work. Like with the scientists when they're talking.
You mean the debate in the
Yeah, the
60s?
debate. The one of them says there are no cures and you won't be able to make any cures. So even if you tried, you would not be able to make a cure for this.
Right. It just the way that Ellie became immune or resistant or whatever you want to call it is so one off and difficult to replicate. I don't think that there would be any way to cure anybody. Maybe like an inoculation that would give you a window of time to do some things, but no, it wasn't going to be like all right, we murdered this child and scooped out her brain and now we can cure the world.
Yeah.
It was still going to be a real long shot. I mean, there's a lot of things that we have been able to wrap our heads around now and cure that are still killing people every day.
Yeah.
We have cures for some kinds of cancer, people still die of them. We have really comprehensive treatments and in some cases curable or cures for HIV AIDS, people still dying of it. So it's also it seemed like they were grasping at straws and they were just willing to sacrifice her.
Yeah. To just to give it a try. So, this reminds me of something that you and I talked about when we did the original podcast was at this point though, do we care if it works or not?
Who's we? Like the viewer?
The viewer, yeah. Like, are we invested in this cure working?
Yeah, because the only people that we have really grown to love are Joel and Ellie,
Right.
whose perspectives we are inclined to agree with,
Mm-hmm.
which is what makes the tension so amazing, right? That's what
Yeah.
makes the tension perfect, is that they are at odds on this decision, or they would be if they knew if they knew there was a decision.
Mm-hmm.
I think Joel's gonna have to pay that bill one day
He is.
because it is his job to save her at all costs, to protect her at all costs, because he took that role. Marlene gave it to him, first of all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she thought she was looking at the solution, but she was looking at her. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The
Yeah.
moment she gave him the job of keeping her alive, she lost at Ellie. She was never going to get that.
Right.
But she was deluded by her sense of righteousness. So, or yeah. But I agree with you. I don't think it matters for us. There's no going back from where the world is. So what does it matter if you cure the disease?
Right.
And somehow this number of people have survived 20 years without becoming infected. It seems that we're doing what humans do, which is adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So did Joel make the right decision?
he made the only decision that he could have made.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's perfectly acceptable to disagree with the decision, but I would disagree with anyone saying that he could have made any other decision.
Right. No. And I think we know that he couldn't because the way Sarah's death, like, plagues him, he couldn't have made any other decision. He was gonna fight like hell to make sure that Ellie stayed alive.
And that could be
And
a factor that Marlene didn't know about.
I was about to say the same thing. That's the thing, Marlene. That's the factor that Marlene didn't know.
Yeah.
You know.
And Marlene is trying to play people like they are that like Marlene's I think weakness is that she thinks everyone thinks like she does.
Mm,
She is so convinced of her mission and her um
mm,
correctness
right.
that of course everybody else agrees with me and they'll see this the same way. I don't think it occurred to her that Joel would think it was weird to chop a kid's head off.
Yeah. But also, though, she could not have known or anticipated the things that they would have encountered, the bonding that occurred within that 3 months.
We saw how Marlene also like her leadership style.
Yeah.
Um and she was not a particularly nurturing leader.
No. No, that reminds me of in the beginning when we meet her and one of her Kim, I think, has a question and her response is tell them to follow in fucking orders.
A line,
Yeah,
tell him
right.
to do as I
It's just that
say.
simple. It's just that simple.
Yeah,
Follow orders.
yeah. And so that is also a particular kind of I don't need you to understand what what I'm telling you to why I'm telling you to do this because I'm right. So what's the point, you know?
Yeah.
When I'm done explaining this to you, I'll still be correct. And that is another really seductive leadership style because it is exhausting. Teaching is exhausting.
Teaching is exhausting.
And look at the toll it takes on well, look what happened to Tez. So you know, and there's something to be said for this that what makes these leadership styles that we've criticized here um so inviting.
So you said something that again go make I'm just gonna go down the thinking rabbit hole. You said look at what happened to Tess. Do you think she let her guard down because Ellie was there?
Yes.
Which is like I don't even know if it's a catch 22 because Ellie was well,
She
okay.
I don't
I
know
was gonna
about
say Ellie was gonna be okay, but maybe not because they could have torn her apart,
yeah, yeah,
right?
she can still die and they made that
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
But I don't know if she let her guard down. I think it's that her guard became extended to Ellie and
Mm.
the second she took to to save Ellie costs her her own life. And that's something that happens to parents. If we want to continue a metaphor we kind of beat to death about Ellie being born or, you know, born out into the world and into the, you know, the womb that she was in the green space or whatever,
Wait a minute, what are your cats doing?
living their
I just
lives.
I just see in the corner like it's a cat.
It's
That's
beef. It's
hilarious.
beef and
But
brisket. It's just living their lives.
it's so funny because like I just need this like glimpse of them but under your by your shoulder.
Yeah. Their tails in the air, like doing the.
Right, right.
I see that all the time actually around the house. I'll see just like tails behind the furniture doing this. I don't know.
That's hilarious.
So Beef has decided that she's not feral anymore, and so
Okay.
that's yeah. She is in the house all the time now. She loves me and she loves brisket, and so they play together. So get back to that metaphor. Then Tess died in childbirth. You know, I know, but she was at the. You know, she fell there at the moment that Ellie was pushed out into the world. And a lot of times, even if it's not died in childbirth, it is still that our parents die. As Kathleen says, children die all the time. Sure, but that's not the natural order, right?
Right,
That's
right.
not the
No.
order it goes in, Kathleen. It goes in the other direction. And even though it does go in the other direction, it is still difficult. it's hard, and saying goodbye to someone who impacted those early parts of our lives, good or bad, it's complicated. That is a life experience that Ellie gets right out the gate.
So thinking about it that way, like I see that the beginning and the end of that episode kind of differently now. Like when we start the episode, Ellie's in a fetal position, she's surrounded by greenery. At the end of the episode, she's standing on her own 2 feet, surrounded by greenery.
And they go through that tunnel when Tess stays and like blows herself up and stuff. If the green space is like the womb that she's in, when they come out that tunnel, that's the birth canal, and Tess dies right there.
My
And
gosh.
and she dies there in that explosion. It pushes out through the. It's like her
Okay,
final
so
put.
so dear showrunners of Last of Us, if you ever want to come and have a conversation with us, we would so love it. Self-proclaimed. No, we're not crazy. We are not crazy. Yeah.
I, Returning to whatever story they want to tell me, and I
Yes.
hope they tell more.
I hope they tell more too. I hope they tell more too. I would love for them to have a spinoff. And I think about this show. This show lives rent free in my head.
Hmm.
And I would probably pay it to live in my head. But I think about like a show like The Fall of Us and just kind of shows like people's lives prior to the fall.
Yeah, there's room to play in a prequel,
Yeah.
and because I think that even though prequels are tired, I think these folks would find something interesting to say, because the story of the second game is so incredible.
Is it?
Yes.
Huh.
It's so good. The way it plays with perspective on good and evil. Also, there's a trans character, trans story arc, allegory in it. It's like, why are these two folks just doing queerness for us? It's so cool. Like just
Hmm.
being able to see. And I've always wanted to see a trans character in the apocalypse, like have to negotiate the kinds of problems a trans character would have. Like for instance, like what happens to us if we lose access to our hormones. That would be a really cool story to tell. Like how do we synthesize hormones or things like that? Because depending on each trans person's body is unique in a lot of ways, even though there are some shared needs or experiences. Uh, it's all very relative. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. I think about this sometimes. Like the medications I take,
Hmm.
like Prozac. Like if I'm not on my depression medication and I start to deal with depression, like I am a very different person.
Or people with ADHD
You know?
whose problem solving skills are impacted by not having their medicine. The
Yeah.
Walking Dead did an episode or a mini story arc with a child who was psychotic, who had schizophrenia, and was experiencing their first like break. What what do you do with that? They raised it and dropped it. The Walking Dead is not the best paced show. I don't. It should have ended a lot sooner than it did. But that was on the season that was still really good. It was season 4, and it was sort of, what do we do with this child who can't distinguish? We can't trust her to agree with the group's priorities because she doesn't see things the same way we do. And it really, it came to a head in a like a shocking way. Like if you ever meet a Walking Dead fan, say, "Look at the flowers, Lizzie," to them and see what they do, because it's awful.
What happened?
So she gets confused. She can't tell the difference between the zombies and people who are living. But what she notices about the zombies is that they can't be hurt. They can't, like they don't get sick. They just keep going, and they're never sad or confused or upset. And so she comes to see them as a better version of living than humans have. And so she starts to ask the question, like, and so she's a psychopath also. So she doesn't understand emotions. So she doesn't understand inner life, and she starts to ask the question like, why don't we all just die and become like them, and then we don't have any problems anymore? And so this is a really dangerous. And so she kills some people, I think, or no, she doesn't. She doesn't kill people, but she gets blamed for some things, and they take the opportunity to take her away from the rest of the group and try to figure out, well, if she can be trusted. And then she kills her sister, and she's like, no, it's fine. I'm she's gonna get up here in a minute. And they're like, yeah, we know she's gonna get up. That they weren't ever able to explain or to help her understand the difference between life and what the zombies had. She thought of them as equal, or even that the zombies had a better existence. And I don't know. In a way, she had a point. They didn't suffer,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So then let's look at the flowers, Lizzie.
they had to kill her. So Carol took her. Carol was the woman who was trying to help her, like to see if there was any hope for her. And Carol was damaged also because she had lost her own daughter.
Yeah, I remember I watched up into that. There was a point that I couldn't watch it anymore. I think for me, The Walking Dead was a heaviness.
It was bleak. Yeah, it was very mid to 2010s.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I mean, The Last of Us. I have an investment. I have an investment in Joel, and it may be because of my research, my interest in families. But I have this.
Well,
I felt an investment there that I didn't necessarily feel.
The Last of Us is also doing interesting things with. It's just it depends on. I think The Walking Dead was a great idea, and it was cool to have a story where the zombies weren't the problem. The zombies were basically a flash flood,
Uh-huh.
and the problem was other people. And
Uh-huh.
the of interest to The Walking Dead story was, how do we function at the human level without these safety guards of these structures that we built up. And so Lizzie, when Carol had to kill her, she took her for a walk and she said, look at this, the flowers over here, Lizzie, and then shot her in the back. So and it was so gruesome and awful. That was one of my favorites, maybe the best season of that show. Anyway, yeah, this show is going to do more with that potential than I think The Walking Dead was able to do, just because of network stuff. Walking Dead was stuck with
Yeah,
AMC.
yeah, yeah. So
Well,
yeah, it would be interesting. So
what have you been watching?
what have okay, so I had a moment and I've been wanting to tell you about this moment. So I started watching The Gentleman. I am not really a Guy Ritchie fan. And I'm also this kind of person that I don't if it's popular, I'm probably not gonna be into it.
Yeah,
So so Guy Ritchie is I think too not mainstream. We had that conversation about directors. Like I think if you mention his name, it almost seems kind of hoity toity. You know what I'm saying? It's like you name drop because you want people to know something about film.
I see.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean.
Yeah,
He's one of these people you'll mention like to sound knowledgeable.
yeah. And in reality, Guy Ritchie, he's like the poor man's auteur. He's got he's the one trick pony.
Huh. Well, I don't know a lot about him, but I started watching this show and in the one on Netflix. I haven't watched the movie. And I became invested. And you know how we talk about me and how I watch TV. There was a point where I got a little bit of anxiety and I didn't know what was going to happen next. And I had that moment, do I fast forward just so I make sure this turns out okay? And I said, "No. I'm going to trust Guy Ritchie. I am going to trust this story that Guy Ritchie wants to tell me." And I was like, that was a breakthrough moment
Okay,
for me.
we're experiencing growth down here
Yes, we are.
in
We
the
are
studio.
totally had a breakthrough moment. I'm like, I'm gonna sit here and trust the story that he wants to tell me. I didn't fast forward.
Have you heard this movie everybody's talking about, I Saw the TV Glow?
I saw the TV glow. Oh,
it's taken the queer community by storm because it's a trans allegory, uh, and it's by um, someone. It's written and directed by someone who made another movie called "We're All Going to the World's Fair," which is just this like really weird experimental film.
Okay.
But I haven't seen I Saw the TV Glow yet. But
Okay.
my process, I also like, I thought of it because you were talking about you don't watch stuff when it's really popular. I don't like to be influenced by the discourse or the zeitgeist of like what
Mhm.
if something is super super popular, I will watch it. Uh, but I don't want to be influenced by what everybody's saying about it at the time. And so that's why I waited to watch The Last of Us, and probably might have waited even longer if it hadn't been for, folks telling me about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably what was the thing that made me my cat just died and I was looking for something to take up some time. So I heard so much about The Last of Us. I was like, let me just see it and just fell in love. What are you watching?
Well, I just finished the second season, or well, it was the first season of Trixie Motel Drag Me Home. So it was like the Trixie Motel was the first season, and Trixie Motel and her partner bought a motel in Palm Springs and renovated it. And I just never seen renovation television like that. And I've dabbled in renovation television, but this was something new. It was storytelling combined with personality, combined with celebrity, and just weirdness. It was queer, it was camp, it was really cool. It was nice to have queer reality television outside the context of competition.
Mm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I thought that was
Huh.
refreshing, and in the context of us, I was like, this is an interruption in
Yeah.
the cutthroat nature of a lot of queer reality television for straight people. And I've been watching movies. Been doing horror movies.
What's the last horror movie you saw?
Last night I watched Smile, which is
What's that?
terrifying.
What really?
Yes, very scary, and also it's a um metaphor for generational trauma, inherited trauma, and also the kinds of traumas that we receive um, as witnesses to horrible things, not simply things that happen to us, but the things we see happen. So I really enjoyed that, and there's gonna be a second one coming out soon.
Huh.
I was like, oh, watch this, and it was very good, very scary. Not, I wouldn't call it like grade A cinema, but it was compelling and, sort of like, ooh, creepy in the right ways, and also like thought provoking in ways that are probably recognizable to most everybody.
I'm going to see The Quiet Place on
The
Friday.
third one,
Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen the other ones, but I want to see Lapita.
you might wanna you might wanna watch. Yeah.
I just want to see Lapita. That's the only reason why I'm going.
Yes, I mean, I'll show up. I didn't like that Us movie that she was in, but I still enjoyed watching her be
S movie?
Us
I was like, S movie. I was like, I don't know.
by
You
Hilton
didn't like
Jackson.
Us?
No. I keep trying to like Jordan Peele,
Mm.
and his I just don't like his horror, and it could be that it's not for me, right? And that's great. I will still continue to watch it. I'll always give it my coin and my attention, but it's it could. There's plenty of cinema. There's plenty of horror movies out there. That is a white man's genre industry. I mean, so there's if folks are out here making movies for people who don't look like me, and they get to experience horror movies, because I think horror is the most important genre in the world. I still love him doing this and bringing it to an audience that might not experience horror as a genre. It's just I don't really vibe with them. It doesn't conjure any fear for me. And I was like,
Uh-uh.
okay, that makes sense, right? It's dealing with a kind of hopefully it's dealing with a kind of fear and anxiety that is specific to to an audience of Black folks, or a particular audience that's not me. I got plenty of stuff to watch and see myself engaged in horror as a feeling on screen. Yeah, but I liked Get Out, but there was a white lens on Get Out.
Say more.
Whiteness was a part of the central horror of Get Out, which was,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, I get this because I know what I'm meant to understand here. And so I liked that one, but a lot of the other ones, like Nope, I had tried to watch Nope so many times.
I didn't understand. No.
Yeah, I really felt like I was watching, like I was being pranked, right? Like the summary of that film, I was like, when does this part start? Because what's going on here? So, and then yeah, Us, I was like, this is creepy and stuff, but I don't really get it, and it doesn't particularly work for me. So
Yeah. I don't know that I got it.
it's working for some folks, so that's all that matters.
Somebody gets
That's
it.
all that matters.
Somebody does.
All right, so what should we watch next?
What should we watch next?
Okay, so first, I think we should decide if we want to do films or if we want to try to choose a TV show.
If we did a TV show. So I kind of have a suggestion. So how do you feel about okay, I'm being hesitant. So there's this new Superman cartoon, My Adventures with Superman. How do you feel about that? But I kind of think so. There's 2 seasons of My Adventures with Superman, but then also I heard a lot about X-Men 97.
I don't know anything about comic books.
Okay, well then maybe not then. So do you have Disney Plus?
Yeah, yeah. So I have seen a lot of like the things that made it to cinema and stuff, and but that's about it. I don't know much about comic books. They just weren't really accessible to me as a kid.
Yeah. Well, so my interest in comic book came from watching the cartoons. So like I love Spider-Man, X-Men, but also I'm a DC fan too. So like
Well,
Batman.
how about because we were talking for a while there about doing Peacemaker.
Yeah.
So we could start with a movie, which is the second Suicide Squad. So that's DC, right?
Yeah, that's DC.
And so the first one is about the Joker, and is not very good at all. But the second one is good. It's really good.
Yeah.
And so there's some DC films out there that have you know they've really sort of upped their game in recent years. It wasn't just like we didn't have to keep seeing Batman over and over again, even though I love Batman. But and then the Spider-Man that's out there right now is in the Marvel verse. But
Yeah. I would like to do my adventures with Superman. I would be interested to hear your take on some things. But then we don't have to do that one. We're just talking it out right now. Do you watch The Boys?
no, but I'm sure I would like it.
You think so?
Yeah.
So I haven't watched the current season yet because like sometimes the show is more graphic than I like. I don't know.
Well, let's okay. For now, let's just pick a movie that we can
Okay.
have fun with.
Okay.
And then, what's something that came out recently? There's the Furiosa. We're gonna have to edit this in later because we're not gonna come up with anything. We really should have done this off camera.
Yeah. Well, we can do it on camera. Viewers, listeners,
Yeah.
there will be something coming.
We'll make an announcement
We'll make an announcement.
somewhere. It'll be a surprise.
It'll be a surprise.
Well, thanks for indulging us about Last of Us again. We cannot promise that it will be the last time we talk about it.
It's not gonna be the
No,
last time
there's
we
no
talk.
way.
Come on.
No, there's no way. But
It's us.
it, it's time for another obsession, though. So,
Yeah, I need an obsession. I don't have one.
well, let's do some digging then. Let's do some research.
Okay. Sounds good.
Join us next time for whatever we come up with.
Yes.